Welcome to, I believe, finally the live half point per podcast where Dalton, I don't think remembered the audio was being picked up as you were talking there at the very beginning. That's okay. New streaming platform. We are getting used to this. You see it very prevalently over Johnny's head right now. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I am your host, Evan Riggs, joined as always by my co-host Dalton Willie and producer Johnny Fam. Guys, how are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
I am doing stellar. We have landing spots. We're getting close to Beat Street season for trading camp. It's all the fun. We're almost back to the NFL season. I think we're 18 weeks away, which isn't that bad because that's just about
So,
enough.
so we're a whole season away from the NFL season still.
Yeah, but that's
I
enough
love
time for
that.
me to do max entries on Best Ball Mania for Underdog. Like, we're in the football season, whether or not you acknowledge it or not. Some of us may be sickos, but some of us have drafts to do.
And some of us are like firmly watching the NBA playoffs for at least another month, 6 weeks or so before we even think about doing a best ball draft. I love how your second best ball draft that you did, it's like 4 players from your dynasty team, but the headline is like, "Yeah, this is my worst best ball draft." Like pretty questionable. Like,
Well, it's a rebuilding dynasty team.
yeah, but best ball, you're never rebuilding, bud.
No, well, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't have Jameer Gibbs and Saquon Barkley in dynasty, and those were the headliners of that best ball draft.
Okay. Dalton took a lot of rookies in that best ball draft. He has written about 2 best ball drafts since we last podcasted. I think there's going to be more on the way. I will also be writing a rookies that could see 100 targets or more. I did that a couple years ago. Got 3 of the 5 off of that list. Were all 3 guys that got 100 targets. Hopefully, can have a similar hit rate this time around. But we are going to talk rookies today. We're doing top 12, one quarterback. I don't waste my energy on Superflex because that's not what we play right now in our main league. And then talking some NFL draft winners and losers as well. And Dalton, I think we can just go ahead and kick this off by getting right into number 1. Yep, like that. Number 1, is it Marvin Harrison Jr. for you?
Yeah, number 1 was pretty easy to do in this one. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has been number 1 for most non-superflex rookie drafts.
He wasn't number 1 for either of us, just like talking about these guys pre-draft, though.
Correct. But with that landing spot in Arizona, there's really not a higher upside you can ask for. Probably the most ideal landing spot of any rookie drafted in the first round, as far as target competition goes, and the addition of Kyler Murray, who's been an above average quarterback. And then he's the only guy on that roster, really, who's not 5'8", which short kings, I feel it, but he's the only weapon they have out there. So he's definitely in line for like 120 target rookie season and just to really excel in that role.
How tall did you say Kyler Murray is?
Kyler Murray, I think he says he's 5'10".
How tall do you think he actually is?
I see where this is going. Kyler Murray says he's 5'10". I think I'm 5'10". Kyler Murray might be closer to 5'8". Some women I've taken on dates for my dating profile might say I'm closer to 5'8". But it's all about what you put out there on the field, boys. It's not about the measurements. Just remember that.
Okay, let's get off of talking about measurements and dates. It is just ironic that 5'8" trying to be 5'10" is talking about 5'8" trying to be 5'10" and Kyler. But yeah, I mean, he landed with a good quarterback. He's gonna have a chance to be. I mean, he will undoubtedly be one of the top 2 target earners right off the bat. There is nobody in his way to do so. The only other guy in that offense that, at least at receiver, I should say, the only other guy at receiver who is even like, it's him and Michael Wilson. Those are going to be the top 2 target earners if they're both healthy for this season. And then obviously tight end, they've got that locked down. But I do think there is potential for him to struggle a little bit just out of the gates because he is going to be kind of that number one guy relied upon heavily, and he's going to get number one cornerbacks covering him. Like, when I say struggle, I do think he'll be a fantasy starter right off the bat. I do also think this could be a little bit of a Bijan, different situations, obviously, but a little bit of a Bijan in that we're going to be a little bit disappointed with him, I think, after his rookie season. And I would just resist the urge to sell low, just like I would tell anybody to resist the urge to sell low on Bijan, too. I don't know how you feel like his rookie season may shape up.
Yeah, I have issues again with where he's being ranked. In underdog right now, he's the 13th player off the board.
Oh, my God.
Some players going right behind him include Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Brandon Ayuk, Chris Olave, and Devontae Adams. So you're setting yourself up to be really disappointed. Um, Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously great all time in college. Last year, after the return of Kyler Murray in week 10, the Cardinals' offense was ninth in EPA per play, but they also ran the ball a lot more than I think people realize. They were fifth in the NFL in rush rate over expectation when Kyler Murray returned. Part of that was a bad passing core, but the other part of that is part of Jonathan Gannon's offensive philosophy on this team. And Marvin Harrison is going to get bracket and double coverages because the next best wide receiver on this team is a tight end, and it's Trey
Yeah.
McBride. So you're just setting yourself up for some weeks where he's going to disappoint. And him finishing as like the wide receiver 16 is not a disappointing rookie season, in my opinion. But with current expectations and where he's at, it's going to be a disappointment, just like we had with Bijan, and just like we consistently do with rookies that we overdraft in early rounds when there's an acclimation period in the NFL, no matter who you are.
So number two, Dalton. Obviously, it's between Rome and Malik Neighbors and one quarterback. Who are you going with at number two? Reminder: I guess I don't think we explicitly. Well, we did rank the top three. Reminder: Dalton had Neighbors, I think, number one pre-draft, so above Rome, and I had Rome number one pre-draft actually. So we'll see if we differ here.
I think you're going to yell at me because I don't have Rome top three, but we'll get there when we get there.
What?
Yeah. But here I have Malik Neighbors. Similar situation to Marvin Harrison Jr. In the sense that he's going to be asked to do a lot. In fact, he's probably going to be asked to do more than Marvin Harrison Jr. because there's even less offensive potential on this New York Giants team. Evan, if you had to take a guess, who would you say is the number two target earner in New York?
Has Darren Waller retired yet?
No. But if he were to play a full season, would you say he ends the team with as second in targets?
First of all, I really need to go look and remember who is in this room before I say something stupid.
You have like Darius Slayton, Rondell Robinson,
Darius
Isaiah Hodgins.
Darius Slayton was going to be my first guess. Jalen Hyatt, like maybe he takes a leap, but he's not going to be even if he has a good year, I don't see him as a high target earner, but Slayton doesn't really profile as that either. So like, yeah, the point is valid. Is that more of a, I mean, obviously it matters in Dynasty, but I think to me that would matter a lot more in redraft, obviously, than in Dynasty, but it does matter a little bit. How much weight do you put in that when you're just long-term forecasting, though?
I'm going to ask a question. I understand we're live. Were we doing Dynasty rankings?
Yes.
Rome is top three. Okay. Moving on from that, I'm going to do some reworking on these rankings live. Get excited, party people. But it does matter to me long term. I copy and pasted your exact comment, and you did not say. You just said top 12 rookies. But
but last year we did top 12 Dynasty, and also the thumbnail says top 12 Dynasty, and the title. So I guess I just caught,
communication, people. It's very important.
Yeah, I guess.
But it still matters for me because, I mean, now that we can talk organizational perspectives, do we believe that New York has a plan organizationally? Like, Daniel Jones has $40 million due to him this year. He's going to get that money. I don't know if Daniel Jones is healthy week 1 with his injury to his neck and his ACL. The backup on this team is Drew Lock, who's never shown excitement, didn't really play well when he got his spot starts for Seattle last year. And then going forward, this team has needs at wide receiver 2 through 4, running back, tight end, and offensive line. So there's just a lot of like, how much is it going to take for New York to have a full rebuild in effect and to come out of this on top? So love Malik Neighbors, love the talent. He's going to have some frustrating up and down performances that we'll probably be saying aren't his fault, where we get a lot of highlights where he's wide open downfield and Daniel Jones is looking at the ground for fear for his life.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones how much longer will he be Malik Neighbors' quarterback? Does he make it through the season? Does Drew Lock get some action as the starting quarterback this year? Like I said, I'm gonna do the receivers most likely to earn 100 targets as a rookie. I think Malik Neighbors is probably number 1 on that list if I were ranking them as far as guys most likely to earn targets. You hit that point already with your question earlier. He's going to immediately be the primary option, and I actually think so. It's not a good landing spot in that I'm like, yes, this is where I was hoping he would land, but I think he's more equipped than like Marvin Harrison Jr., for example, and probably even Rome, to be in a situation like this and have good production because he is so good after the catch. He can move around, he can be put in the slot, he can have those layup throws and make big plays out of that. So I do think he actually has the potential to have the best rookie season. And then long term, I like him a lot. I have him 3, but it is very close between he and Rome because Rome does not land in a spot where it's like he's gonna get on the field for sure a lot right away and be productive. Now, does he have the best long-term quarterback of any of these guys right now? Yes, I do believe that he does. And could he beat Keenan Allen out at this point in Keenan Allen's career? Maybe not right away, but like, could we kind of see a changing of the guard in week 6 where he's getting more volume than Keenan Allen? Yes, I do believe that is at least possible. I think with Rome, it'll be possibly a slow burn, and you just have to kind of know yourself as a drafter. Are you okay with that slow burn? Will you avoid temptation of selling low because there will probably be chances to sell low, chances for others to buy low, probably more pertinently with Rome.
Yeah, wrapping up the Neighbors discussion and moving to Rome, I think my nightmare scenario with Rome is it ends up like, or not Rome, I'm sorry, Malik Neighbors, is that it ends up like last year for Drake London. I'm writing team previews right now. He had 110 targets, and PFF charted 73 of those targets as catchable. And I could see a very likely scenario where you come out of the year and you're like, man, this guy had 140 targets. And then you're like, oh, but, 80% of them were catchable and another 20% weren't. And I feel like that's a unfortunate outcome for Neighbors. At the end of the day, though, unlike London, you get the ball in his hands at the 2-yard line and he can take it to the house. No offense, Drake London. He's still a great player.
That was a rude shot.
Yeah. Sorry, they're also mowing my lawn outside if you're catching this.
I was going to say, it's like, seems like there's a lot of traffic or yard work or both happening right now.
Incredibly rude of them not to respect HPPP. I'll talk to them.
Weird time, 6 p.m. to mow?
They either do it at 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. I don't know what they do and why they do it. Moving on to the Rome Odunze discussion, he is in a really good spot long term, like we said. I am also already tired of the JSN comparisons.
Yeah.
For one, Seattle.
For one, he's better.
For one, he's just better. Let's just get that one out of the way and in that debate. For two, Seattle had to run 2 wide receiver sets so much because their offensive line fell apart. It's not like Chicago has a great offensive line, but it's not as bad as Seattle's was last year. Mm-hmm. And I expect them to have 3 wide receiver sets on the field way more frequently than we saw it in Seattle. We also have an opportunity for him to immediately build rapport. And Keenan Allen's there for 1 year, and then it's Rome's back or wide receiver room with DJ Moore. And with Harrison and Neighbors, our trepidation is that they're going to not get unfavorable coverages. Rome is not going to do that. He's going to have situations where they're setting him up to play against linebackers. Yeah. And his route running is going to work so well there. And speaking of great route running, this lawnmower is running his route literally right up to my window. So super appreciative of that.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing that you just like too is he being Rome will have the opportunity to learn from guys like DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and be shown the ropes, whereas the other guys are going to be thrown into the fire. So that is a kind of a counterpoint to the maybe not immediate production for him. But I think I've kind of spoke my piece on Rome. Are we ready to move to where I think it actually gets interesting? We all know the top three in some order. As long as we're all on the same page, that's Dynasty ranks. We all know the top three in some order.
Just for what it's worth, even in redraft, I had Rome at 5. So it's not like I was throwing him out the window.
Sounds like out the window.
I just largely disagreed with him being a top 3-4 player in redraft.
Could happen. He could also have 1,000 yards this year. All right, number 4. I'm
just gonna say that.
I can't just say that. Number 4. I know we're gonna be different here. Who is your number 4?
This is where I departed, and I went with Caleb Williams here.
Oh, okay. That's who I have number 4 too. But I'm floored that you do.
No, this is the best landing spot that I could find.
You didn't want to draft him in our rookie draft with your number 5 and 6 pick?
No, I got big A-Rich, A-Dog. He's going to lead me to titles on titles on titles. But this is the best landing spot I could find for any rookie in like the last 10 years.
Like basically ever. What number 1 pick, I guess. What number 1 pick has ever walked into anything remotely close to what he's walking into right now? It just I can't think of one.
The closest I could even get was Andrew Luck's situation where the Colts team wasn't as bad as its record. They just didn't have Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
But even then, he has an incredible opportunity. It's a top 15 offensive line. It's a top, 3 wide receiver room at least.
Yeah, it's hard. You just never know with rookies how immediately good there will be. I think we know, but we just don't know for sure. I mean, you think like Cincinnati better. I mean,
and then it gets hard.
Yeah, after that, it's like
San Francisco. Probably.
San Francisco's better. Yes, I still have a ton of respect for the Tampa Bay guys. I'm trying to think who else. Like the Texans. The Texans actually are probably up there as well. Kind of forget that Stephon Diggs is down there now. There's another one that was like in the conversation for me that I can't think of right now. But yeah,
I mean the Eagles could be.
Yeah, the Eagles.
Smith opinions and
the Eagles I think are better. Just like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are. Like AJ Brown is way better than any of these other guys, and Devontae Smith is like on par with DJ Moore. But this is, regardless of the debate, this is a top 8 receiver room. I think we can say probably conservatively.
Yeah. The biggest concerns are Chicago just ruins quarterbacks, which it's a narrative. It's not a fact. I get
Did you see Caleb Williams' reaction when someone told him like what their franchise record for passing yards, like total passing yards was?
No, I did not.
He's like, oh, that's not very much. And the Chicago guys like, yeah, welcome to our world.
Yeah. I mean, this is the only franchise that doesn't have a 4,000 yard passer. It is objectively terrible.
And he'll probably do that as a rookie if he stays healthy.
Yeah, he could break Chicago quarterback records year 1. So dynasty-wise, like this is a start and sit, forget about it for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And you just move on from it. He is the best prospect up there with Luck, Trevor Lawrence. Like it's really hard to find negatives in his profile. The biggest negatives are like sometimes he gets out of a pocket, but he also played behind a USC line that wouldn't last a day in the UFL. Like there's just a lot here.
Yeah, not just the line, the receiver room, not talent, but like I don't know. There were a lot of clips going around of guys running had to have been incorrect routes or just bad coaching. I don't know which. By the way, hello Cliff Kingsbury.
I was going to say, by the way, that coach is now an NFL coordinator again.
We'll get to that later. But yeah, Caleb, I think even in one quarterback is a pretty easy number 4 for me because I am a big believer in the prospect. You kind of touched on it. I think the one thing you can ding him on is he kind of tries to play hero ball a little bit. where like, but and this is not. I don't. People draw the Mahomes comparison because of style, and I'm not trying to do that here. But that was footwork and too much hero ball were like the two things with Mahomes. So that is something that can get better with age, can get better with offensive line play, can get better with just the realization that okay, this does not work at this level. Can that be something he struggles with out of the gate? It absolutely could be. He could be Justin Fields 2.0 in the sense of we're yelling at him, throw it, stop holding the ball, man. But he's just so much more talented as a passer, obviously, and he does have just pure fantasy perspective here. He does have that running upside to where he's not going to be Jaden Daniels as a runner, but he is going to give you, more than average rushing production, I think, at quarterback.
Yeah. Well, and the good news is he has enough weapons to mitigate the need to even play hero ball. Like getting the ball out quickly is going to be his best friend with Keenan Allen. And when he takes those deep shots, DJ Moore has done great in that.
Yeah.
And I feel like
and Rome can do both of those things.
Yes. And those tendencies he developed his last year really at USC, I think were just in part one, there's just a ton of pressure on him. He's been the number one overall pick for almost 2 years in a lot of people's minds. And two, like that USC offense, defense, coaching, everything just fell apart in California that year for him. And I just don't see him failing in the NFL. I see maybe we get disappointed and he has a Trevor Lawrence-esque career arc, but even then, I'm not disappointed with what Trevor Lawrence has done.
So if we're saying the downside for him is he's a top 8 quarterback kind of year in, year out, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. The ultimate downside is that at some point in the last 100 years, the city of Chicago had a curse placed on it by a witch, and quarterbacking is impossible in that city. And somehow he ends up the next Mitch Trubisky, but I doubt that happens.
Speaking of cursed franchises, I have Brock Bowers number 5. Is that who you have number 5?
Okay, I'm just gonna stick with this one. Because I promised the people there were spicy takes here, and the spicy takes got alleviated when we went Dynasty. I have Brock Bowers at 12, and I'm sticking with it.
You can't stick with that in Dynasty.
No, I actually have Brock Bowers at 6, so I have him one lower here.
Okay.
It was a lot more fun when I had him at 12, which feels right in redraft. And I really wish I could stick with that spicy take and we could get some clips out of it. We can't. No, we could talk Brock Bowers here. I have Xavier Worthy here, but we can kind of get to him next.
Yeah, I mean, the landing spot is not ideal. If this were an ideal landing spot, I think I would have had a real hard time between he and Caleb at 4. But, I mean, if you're not playing any tight end premium, I just don't see how you can get him inside that top 4. He is an unbelievable player. And he's just like Devontae Adams. I still think it's going to be good for a couple more years. You still have their receiver Jacoby Myers. There we go. Jacoby Myers, like still there. And the other thing with both Adams and Myers is they kind of occupy that tight end area of the field quite a lot. So I just worry about that. Now, with that said, there are ways to scheme Brock Bowers the ball. As we talked about last week, Georgia ran literal jet sweeps for this man, and he had like 5 rushing touchdowns as a tight end in college. Will he do that in the NFL? Probably not to that extreme, but like he is a freak athlete enough to where they will get him the ball. It is Michael Mayer who is hurt a lot more by like Brock Bowers' value is hurt a little bit by this landing spot. Michael Mayer's value is tanked by Brock Bowers landing in this spot. So like, let's not get it twisted. There's no competition for tight end 1 long-term here, I don't think. But just competition, lack of quarterback. And then with just forecasting ahead, a lot of teams need quarterbacks next year. Not a lot of quarterbacks we're excited about coming up in the NFL draft. As of now, things can always change in that regard. But there's just not a great solution that I'm seeing at quarterback for the Raiders for the foreseeable future.
Oh, I have a fun one for you.
Okay.
Dak Prescott.
I think I heard somebody say this. I can't remember who it was, which I can give credit, but I would like to place a $50 bet on Shadir Sanders being the Raiders quarterback in a year because I'm pretty sure that's going to happen.
That feels like that fits Antonio Pierce's locker room culture. I would agree with that. You touched on some of my concerns with Brock Bowers short term as well, with the crowded room, Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell being the quarterback. My other concern, and I feel like this got lost in the sauce because it happened quickly. Do you know who the offensive coordinator is for the Raiders?
I do not know.
It's Luke Getsy. It was the Bears offensive coordinator last year when they had a historically terrible offense. Um, their wide receiver room in Las Vegas is better than the wide receiver room was last year in Chicago. The quarterback play is not much better. It's a different style of quarterback. But we had Ben Salak and multiple industry experts breaking down that like how terrible and juvenile the Bears offense was. And Antonio Pierce is not an offensively minded head coach. So a lot of this is going to lay with Luke Getsy. So my concern there is that he just does not effectively open up the room for Brock Bowers to be used. They bring him in and they're like, guess what, buddy? You're playing Y. You're blocking on this. And he can block, sure. It's just not what you should be using him for. And the offensive line currently in Brandon Thorne ranks is at 27th. So there's going to be a lot of pressure for both these quarterbacks.
Yeah, and Samir White is the running back now, not Josh Jacobs.
Dylan Lobby is the running back now, not right. But you just compound all that, and like it's going to be a bad season, and I'm sure we're going to have a great time this offseason where everybody calls him Kyle Pitts 2.0 and everybody tells you to buy him low.
Yeah.
Couple of like collegiate stats. If he was a wide receiver, he was second in this class in yards per route run. He was only beat out by Malik Neighbors. He had the most yards after the catch of any wide receiver drafted in the first 70 picks. Brock Bowers is legitimately like a wide receiver one weapon. I'm just concerned his utilization this season doesn't look great, but the guy has the juice, and eventually the Raiders will figure something out at quarterback and probably have a new coaching staff in place in the next couple of years that I will trust more than the current staff.
So from a redraft perspective, I know that you're very familiar with ADP right now because you've done multiple underdog drafts. I am not, but I'm looking at Fantasy Pros. He is the tight end 12. There's what is he an underdog right now? Do you know?
Yeah, so he is the tight end 10, but his ADP change, he's dropped a whole round.
Really? I was going to say, I guarantee by August, this man's going to be like tight end 7 or 8. He is going to go up, and he's going to be on my bust list if he does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's unfortunate. It's just not a good spot. Like, I think the Raiders didn't expect Bo Nix and Michael Penix to go where they did, and most people didn't. And I think they thought they had a shot at quarterback. And when both those guys went, I'm sure Tom Telesco looked at his board and just said best available. Yeah. And it makes sense to do that in a lot of cases. And he did it here, and it sucks for fantasy, but it's probably the best move the Raiders organization could have done.
Yeah. Okay, number 6 for me is Xavier Worthy. You're number 5, so I'll let you lead the way on the Worthy conversation here.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about this in my last underdog draft where I did end up taking Xavier Worthy, but the kid just has all the juice. At 17 years old, he led Texas in receiving and had over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Rookie breakout scores are getting a little tiresome in the fantasy community because we have COVID years and those have changed drastically when players come out. But from a rookie breakout score, he was J.J. Zacharyason's number 1 ranked prospect, even outdoing Marvin Harrison Jr. in that category. He faced the highest off-throw rate in college football last year at 23.7%, which, I mean, that's pretty terrible. That's over a quarter of his targets were off target. Quinn Ewers did a bad job at throwing the ball to both him and A.D. Mitchell. So the negatives in his profile, I don't really agree with. I get that he's a small boy, but also he's a very good screen ball game player, which fits so well in what Andy Reid likes to do in his offenses. His top end comps from multiple like draft scouts have been Deshaun Jackson,
Yeah.
and Andy Reid has a great familiarity with how to utilize that player and make him effective. And then you just give him Patrick Mahomes,
Yeah.
and there's really like the ceiling scenario for Xavier Worthy is so incredibly high because this is the first time in 2 years Patrick Mahomes has like a legitimate NFL caliber receiving room, and Andy Reid and co do such a great job at setting those weapons up for success.
Well,
I'm
we'll see. We'll see if Rashee Rice chooses to be there
Yeah,
at
but
some
even
point
without
this
Rashee
year.
Rice, like you still have Hollywood Brown and you still have Travis Kelsey, and that top three probably beats out like 2 years ago. It was Juju, Sky Moore, and Travis Kelsey, which I think
Yeah.
this room is still better than that.
Well, it was Juju MVS who actually had a good year for MVS and Travis Kelsey probably
Yes.
the previous year. But yeah, like we talked about this with the pre-draft show. The Chiefs were one of our favorite landing spots for Worthy. I think for a lot of people. But for me specifically, it was because he needed to be in a place that will both put him in motion a lot and get him free releases a lot. Because it's funny. He's a lot like Hollywood Brown in the sense where he can get buried if you just put him on the outside by bigger guys sometimes, but get him a free release and he is fast enough. I mean, he's even faster in Hollywood. He's fast enough to just be a real nightmare in that scenario. And again, like you have Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback for his entire career, most likely is his entire career as a Chief, however long that is. He's definitely got a lot more to him as a receiver than Kadarius Toney, than Sky Moore, McCole Hardman if he's back. And like I said, Rashee Rice, we'll see. We'll see what happens with all of that. Worthy is both an interesting short and long-term guy for those reasons. Like I could see him being, I'm sure in your redraft ranks, he was higher than 6 where I have him, and maybe even higher than 5 where you have him right now. And then, yeah, long-term, he's obviously in a great landing spot, great quarterback, great coach, all that.
Yeah. I just don't really know what his worst case floor outcome looks like with where he's at now, unless size somehow becomes a terrible detriment to his game. But I just don't see the Chiefs putting him out there on an island every game and saying, yeah, go ahead and beat Sauce Gardner one-on-one. That's just never been the Chiefs' MO.
Yeah. Yep, agree. All right, number 7, Brian Thomas. Is that who you have here as well?
I sure do have Brian Thomas as number 7.
So Brian Thomas, like the landing spot for me didn't really move the needle one way or another. It's like, I don't know. Maybe that's because I have a sour taste in my mouth from the Jags last year as a whole. They need an X. They got an X. They also got Gabe Davis. So that is interesting because like, I think one of the maybe medium range outcomes for Brian Thomas is like Gabe Davis, maybe a little bit lower than medium range outcome because he's got better hands, all that, a little bit more gifted of a player. But like high end, he's definitely got more potential and should be better than Gabe Davis. But he should find his way on the field. Like it should be he and Gabe Davis on the outside, Christian Kirk on the inside. That fit is pretty clean. The player's good. He is a very dangerous vertical weapon. He can definitely separate as far as that goes too. It's just like, again, a fine landing spot, a good player. This is about where I would have had him pre-draft too.
Yeah. I always had him around this like 5-6 area in pre-draft. Feel pretty comfortable with where he landed. I wrote about this. He happened to be the guy that went right after Xavier Worthy with me in my underdog draft. Things to like about it. The Jaguars are 3rd in the NFL in vacated targets with over 60% of their targets going. Obviously, a lot of those are Calvin Ridley. I also think he fills a better need for what they were trying to do with Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it a lot last year where they should work him inside, where
He's a flanker, and they were trying to make him an X.
Yes. Where Brian Thomas Jr. profiles almost oldly as an X. Like he hit 75% of his routes came on hitches or goes his last year of college. Kind of underrated speed game, mostly because of what Xavier Worthy did. He ran a 4.33 at the combine, but like to add to that, he's also 60 pounds heavier than Xavier Worthy, which just kind of tells you about that. A lot of people are comping him to DK Metcalf just because both of them came out with unrefined route trees.
I was going to say the route tree is very similar.
Yes. But I like the landing spot. I don't like the offensive philosophy in Jacksonville. I like the connection that he'll have with Trevor Lawrence. And again, I just think we know what Gabe Davis is, and there's going to probably be like 6 weeks of the season where Gabe Davis runs more routes. And I think by the time we end this season, Brian Thomas Jr. has solidified himself as the second option to Christian Kirk in this offense.
Yeah, very, very much in play. All right, number 8. We're on your number 8 too, right? We aren't missing anything for you.
Let me confirm with all the changes. Yeah, we're on 8.
Okay, so number 8 for me, I have Lad McConkey.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, I knew we were going to be pretty lockstep for a lot of this. So
I think I change a lot going past these players, unless you went a little silly too.
I don't know what consensus really is, so I don't know what silly means. But I do know that McConkey is like pretty ideal to replace Keenan Allen in the slot for Herbert in this offense. Now, the questions for this team start at their outside receivers, and that's another topic that could affect McConkey. Like, I think he's going to deliver like kind of immediate flex worthy kind of production at receiver this year. But I also think we're going to see some drawbacks of there not being got better guys on the outside. Like it might be a little inefficient, and we might have conversations like, man, if there was just somebody else to take some attention off of him, he could even be having a better season. Like I kind of think that's going to be the story of his rookie year. But he's a very good player, very fast, which like I think if people just look at him, they probably won't think that this is a fast guy because he's a white receiver.
Why? Okay.
But he's very fast. He's very good with the ball in his hands after the catch. Like I think there's a pretty good chance he leads the team in targets this season for the Chargers. Obviously, you look long term. He's got a good quarterback. And you would think that receiver room is going to continue to evolve and hopefully get better around him to help him produce more efficiently down the line.
Yeah, I started doing my team breakdowns, and it's really hard to get excited about the Chargers in a lot of places.
Everybody will find a way, trust me.
They sure will. Right now, Justin Herbert is quarterback 19 off the boards
Oh,
in underdog. I mean,
really?
his fall, is pretty terrible. And in my opinion, I looked at Lad McConkey similar to how we talked about Jordan Addison last year, where we really liked the talent, but we really wanted him to have somebody else there.
Yeah.
Because this outcome on paper looks fine because you're like he's in line for 150 targets. And we're like, is he? Because I don't trust his ability to win in a lot of difficult coverages he's going to get. And then to add to it,
I mean, he's a small boy. He's like Addison. He's a small boy
Yeah.
who can get bullied by bigger NFL cornerbacks.
To add to it, I get like he looks really good running routes and he is a good route runner. He never cleared 1,000 yards at Georgia. Part of that is because of Brock Bowers.
Yep.
Right now, his NFL total is set at 780 yards, which is funny because at Georgia, the highest he ever got was 740.
I bookmarked that tweet of someone freaking out about that because while, yes, he could easily go under that, it's like, okay, we're really going to look at this guy's college yards and say, yeah, he can't do that his rookie year because he never did it in college.
Yeah, they also play less games in college. Just fun fact. But what concerns
he had better receivers on his team at college than he has right now.
That's a terrible thing to say, and it's so true. What concerns me is I think we know what the Jim Harbaugh philosophy is going to be here. Last time Jim Harbaugh was in the NFL with Greg Roman as a coach, they threw the ball 29.4 times a game. Justin Herbert's career average is 39.8. Like
I think we'll see a happy medium in between there. Like the NFL has got even more pass heavy since Jim Harbaugh was in it last, but Herbert's volume is probably going to come down a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of Herbert, like 250 yards, 1 touchdown games where they're doing the Mike Vrabel Tennessee Titan playbook of they're like, we're going to be hyper efficient on play action and run the ball more than a lot of you want to see. And The last thing I'll say about McConkey is this guy has like the worst injury profile of any of the wide receivers we'll
Yeah.
talk about here.
Yeah.
He got injured a lot. I don't want to ding a player for that, but when you have a medical resume like his coming into the NFL, there's always concerns on that, and he's going to get a lot of physical coverages because they're going to want to test him at the line of scrimmage.
So the Chargers employing Lad McConkey and J.K. Dobbins and kind of needing them both to do something this year. What could go wrong with that, Dalton?
Yeah, I've never seen J.K. Dobbins not play a full 16 games.
I've never seen the Chargers completely disintegrate by week 5.
Yeah, it's not like the Chargers don't get injured all the time.
Oh, God. I hadn't even put the Chargers aspect of that all together. Okay, on to a currently injured prospect for me at number 9. This is where I go running back, and this is my only running back of round 1 in Jonathan Brooks. Who do you have number 9?
Okay, well, we are in agreement here, but I have 2 more running backs, so we're definitely going to have some disagreement.
I think this is the only running back that's worth a round 1 pick, in my opinion. I know the knee is a concern with him, both short and long term. Short term, how will he be this season? Like, I feel like for whatever reason, people are not dinging him the same way they ding an NFL running back coming off of a torn ACL. I don't know if it's because it was kind of out of sight, out of mind because he was in college. It didn't affect fans. Nobody was really paying attention to that. But he tore his ACL in November.
Yeah, it was late.
Like we'll see if he's ready for the. I mean, that will be stuff we'll be following all off season, and that is more relevant for this season. But also, like, he's a running back who already has a torn ACL, so that's just kind of a little ding on his profile right now. But he's a very decisive and very powerful runner. He can catch the ball, best pass blocker in the class. Like, he, to me, is the only guy that really profiles he's the guy that profiles best by far as a potential workhorse running back in this class.
Yeah, in this class, he had 89th percentile in adjusted production, which was the best in class. He was on pace to beat Bijan's yards record at Texas before the injury, and that was obviously working with a pretty hampered quarterbacking room that I've already talked about. I won't belabor the point. He also lands in a Carolina team that really reinforced the interior of their offensive line. And Dave Canales, who I have seen turn a lot of running backs into gold, including Rachaad White.
Yeah, the Carolina thing goes both ways because we're optimistic about the coach. We're optimistic about year 2 improvement for Bryce Young, better offensive line.
Deontay Johnson.
Hopefully, better receiver room. Even though I still have some questions about some of the guys there, some of the young guys in Leggett, who's not on my ranks, and Jonathan Mingo, who, yeah. But yeah, like, there's also the other side of it where Carolina could just stink again, and that could be a problem for Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah, I really don't believe they're going to suck again, just to be completely honest. I just really like Dave Canales. He's done so many good things for quarterbacks. What raised my eyebrow, and this is probably a nothing burger, but we're also in the middle of the offseason.
Don't say what I know you're about ready to say.
It's just weird that Dave Canales did coach Rashad Penny, and suddenly they signed Rashad Penny off the street after drafting a running back when they have Miles Sanders and they have Chuba Hubbard, Max Holt, and kind of Bubba. And I just
Chuba Hubbard, for anyone who's wondering, Willie Dalton was
you
talking
keep saying
about
that, buddy, and I'll keep saying it my way. It's just it's just like, why did they do that? And I don't know why they did that, but I still believe Jonathan Brooks. It's just a little weird that they signed Rashad Penny.
It's very upsetting that I have 6 of our drops loaded in here,
and not that one,
and not the Brian Windhorst. Why would they do that?
But why did they do that? I mean, it's just weird because there's a history with that running back, and I just don't know why they did it, man.
But I think you kind of answered your own question. There's a history with that running back, so hey, let's see if this guy can be. Let's give him a chance to make the team. But
what if he does it again? What if he's back for 3 weeks till he gets injured?
But listen, wasn't there every opportunity for him to do literally anything for Philly last year, and he never did?
Anyways, you make a great point. Counterpoint: have you watched what he did in college?
What was that, like 6 surgeries ago?
Hey. Uh,
All right,
okay.
number 10. If you have 2 more running backs, I think we're going to be
I did
different.
swap out again because we're not doing redraft, or because
Oh
we're
my.
not doing redraft. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so
Trey
give me your.
Benson lost the list, and I added who you're probably going to say next,
Well,
which
no,
is Ricky.
you give me your number 10.
Ricky Purcell.
Oh, he's my number 11.
Oh, look at that. Oh, I lied to you. My number 10 is Jermaine Burton.
Okay, so that is my number 10.
Son of a. Okay, whatever. You go ahead and you start with this one.
So we're gonna talk just really quickly at the end of this some draft winners and losers. Just to be clear, Burton would be a winner. I just we're gonna try and leave the round 1 guys out of that conversation. We heard about red flags with him before the draft. There is if you just Google Jermaine Burton, Tennessee, you will see him strike a Tennessee female fan who storms the field, and it's not a good look. It is a very bad look. With that said, he went about where people thought he would in the draft, which is it matters for him more than most because there were red flags. It's like how is he interviewing? What do teams actually think of the person? Because the player, I mean, anybody who scouts these guys has said this is a first round NFL talent who just he's not going to get drafted there because of some things off the field. With that said, I haven't really seen anything else off the field. Maybe there's some other stuff there, but the fact that he got taken where he did is a good sign. And then, like, the situation is unbelievable that he gets drafted into for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's Joe Burrow, it's the Bengals. Like, that's great. He's got a great quarterback, great offense, as long as that quarterback is healthy, all of that stuff. And number two, I don't think T. Higgins is long for Cincinnati. Like, whether it is before this season, which at this point it kind of seems unlikely, or after this season, like, I don't think T. Higgins is there much longer. And if he is there, and we have all 3 of those guys this year, it is kind of scary, the possibilities for Cincy with that top 3 receiver group, because this is a guy who he is an unbelievable vertical slot weapon. He can get open on all 3 levels. He is a very explosive player. And then you have T. Higgins, who is more of just like that pure X ball winner. So, like, Matt Waldman made this point, and I think it's interesting that, again, this is not comparing him to Jamar Chase, but he can do more of the Jamar Chase stuff than T. Higgins, which in the future, when that is their theoretical 1-2 punch, gives them more versatility as an offense that can be less predictable. And, I mean, Waldman basically said that this guy can be T. Higgins from a production standpoint, just stylistically different over the next couple of years. Like, that is what kind of talent we're talking about. And the fact that the off the field red flags didn't kill him in the draft like it did some others are just a major, major plus for his prospect profile.
Yeah, Phil Yates even was on Establish the Run, and he said he was surprised that Burton went where he went because of the concerns off the field. So he got, in a lot of ways, a bump in draft capital. This was a guy who a lot of people had as a round 1 grade. Mm-hmm. If you just looked at him from a pure production standpoint, you said it with him being able to comp for Jamar Chase's versatility, and it gives them a lot of utilizations in that way to move him around. This is also a team that kept Tyler Boyd like floating above 800 yards, even with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase there. Yeah. And I think he's more talented than Tyler Boyd, and he can move in the slot. It gives him that explosiveness. I mean, it's just such a good long-term spot. Like, when T. Higgins leaves, it's going to be a good 1-2 punch. The only concern here is, like, does he screw up off the field again?
Yeah.
But he's in a room that has clear leadership in Joe Burrow and guys who are going to hopefully help him acclimate. And last, there's not a lot you can do in Cincinnati, so it's going to be a lot harder for him to get in trouble.
I don't know. Joe Mixon sure kept finding ways to at least almost get in big trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's possible anywhere. But yeah, if he does keep his nose clean, that this is a guy with higher upside than I think even the 10th spot in this draft. Would you agree?
Yes. The only other thing I'll say on this situation, and this is absent Jermaine Burton, and this is really just a 1 year thing. The vibes I'm getting on Joe Burrow's wrist are getting weird. I drafted Joe Burrow last week in my underdog draft. I wrote about how he's a screaming value. And then over the last week on Twitter, I'm not including that stupid report where someone was like, this injury has completely ruined his wrist, because I don't buy that. But Joe Burrow coming out in like 3 different press conferences and talking about his wrist injury and how he's still healing from it, and how he had to talk to linebackers because no quarterback's ever dealt with it before. It's just like these weird, like 2 years ago, Matthew Stafford vibes with his elbow. I don't think it's going to be a long-term issue. I don't even think it's going to be an issue this year. I'm just getting a lot of weird vibes from him on it, and I wish he would just stop talking about it so we don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just last thing on Burton, like if this were let's just pretend this were Madden and we didn't have to think about anything off the field. I think he'd probably be my wide receiver 4 in this class, maybe 5. Just pure talent perspective to give people an idea of like potentially what kind of player he can be if everything else clicks the right way.
Yeah, I mean, the only outline concern is he never reached 1,000 yards in college. Part of that was his last year at Alabama. The quarterback play left a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
And like the tertiary off the field concerns that we don't know about that happened at Georgia are why a lot of people say he didn't see more time in that room. And
Yeah.
also they don't produce 1,000-yard wide receivers. AD Mitchell went through there. Ladd obviously went through there, and Jermaine Burton went through there. None of those guys were able to crack
Like
that.
George Pickens.
Yeah, George Pickens. Yeah, so Georgia, a lot of great receivers. For some reason, they don't give them the ball.
Well, okay, number 11, Ricky Pearsall. I think that's who you have as well. Is that right?
Yeah, he was out of my top 12 in redraft, but can't deny the talent.
Yeah, also, in redraft, obviously, like this could be a redshirt year for him. It could be.
You can't deny the talent. You also can't deny the fact that it's just clear that San Francisco looked at their team and said, we're drafting for next year and the years following with some of their picks, because between Debo and Ayuk, there's not enough money to go around because Brock Purdy's going to get paid. And I saw someone put his AAV at $25 million a year. Guys, Daniel Jones got $40 million. Like, he's getting paid. He's getting a lot of money. It's going to happen. The Niners have to do it. Every team has to bite this bullet.
Yeah. Also, AAV, average annual value, for anybody who's wondering about that.
Yeah, for you sickos who don't get on like over the cap once a week to like look at some players' potential cuts. It looks like Ayuk is staying. I know there's been a lot of smoke about him getting traded. If Ayuk leaves, like this really jettisons.
Yeah, I mean he's up to like 6 on my board probably if that happened.
Yeah, but I love it. Concerns with Pearsall, I don't have any. Like he's a great player. He's a great athlete with his RAS scores. He also had like the catch of the year in college last year with that one-handed catch.
He has the best hands in this class. He on the reception perception, I believe, was second against man coverage, only behind Rome Odunze. As far as separation, he can get open against zones, can separate on all 3 levels. Like, really awesome player. And I think the back-to-back with him and Burton is so interesting because, like, if you're in this spot of the draft and both those guys are available, you can either take the home run swing or, like, shoot for a double, I think. With
Burton's a double, right?
Yeah. Okay. No. Burton is the home run. Pearsall is the double. Where like I think Burton has more upside, but Pearsall is like, I am very confident he's going to be a very good NFL receiver. Burton, I think like you could easily strike out with Burton.
I think 2 to 3 years from now, Pearsall could be the wide receiver 1. When I don't think Burton will ever get that just because of who's there.
On his own team, sure, but like the wide receiver 2 in Cincy can be every bit as valuable as the wide receiver 1 on a lot of other teams, including San Fran. But neither here nor there with that. That's projecting probably a long way out. But yeah, I obviously a big Pearsall fan. I've literally said on our last show, the only bad fits for him are places with like established guys. I mentioned San Francisco by name as a place I did not want him to go. Long term, I think it's great. Like he fits the scheme really well. I think he'll be really good there. But it's just unfortunate that he's a guy we might have to wait on because skill set wise, he should not be.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll say is like go talk to Brandon Ayuk and whatever he did his first 2 years. Don't do that
Yeah.
because there's something about Kyle Shanahan being a little Grinch with good players, and just don't get on his bad side. So I don't have to talk about how you're really good and how Kyle Shanahan's an idiot.
Brandon Ayuk, Dante Pettis, like the list just goes on and on of great players.
Jordan Mason, Jawan Jennings, Kendrick Bourne. I mean, so many.
Tyrion Davis Price was
Oh,
wronged.
Trey Sermon.
Okay, number 12. Do we differ here? Who do you have at 12?
I have Blake Corum here.
Okay, we do differ. I have Jaden Daniels.
Okay, he was a loser for me, but we'll talk about him in a bit. Well, we'll talk about. Let's just get on to Corum for a bit and why I like him.
Okay,
and then
Blake Corum is a winner for me, so I'll have stuff to say.
Okay, so we're in some agreement here then. I am first of all, Kyren Williams is a top 14 pick right now in the NFL in underdog ADP. I'm absolutely terrified of it. For one,
I mean, what I say before that, I said they're gonna bring in somebody else, and the price that he's at right now, which at that time, like in March, I don't know what it was, but like the price is at right now, you're not gonna want to draft him at that, and yeah. I think his price should continue to fall at least a little bit.
Yeah, collegiately, Blake Corum is Kyren Williams, but better.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's things to do in the NFL that you have to be able to do that Kyren Williams has done and Corum has not. But I tweeted this out last week, and I'm working on my team previews. But what really concerns me is last year, Kyren Williams graded out as the 141st best pass blocker in the NFL out of 148 qualifying running backs. He was so bad at it, like Ronnie Rivers was getting significant snaps. And if you don't know who Ronnie Rivers is, that's okay because most people don't. And that's the first concern. Like this guy is not a player who they want on the field all the time in Kyren Williams. Blake Corum in college did never allow a sack. So there's a big market for him to immediately establish himself. Secondly, Sean McVay has a great history at dropping running backs just whenever he feels like it and putting a new guy in. And I think Blake Corum could very well end up being like this room's leader. Kyren Williams never has had a healthy NFL season. Mm-hmm. And the moment he goes down and Corum comes in and Corum has a Kyren Williams-esque game of like 100 yards and a touchdown, then suddenly the narrative shifts and Blake Corum becomes the screaming value. This is a team that will always effectively use running backs, going all the way back to CJ Anderson. Sean McVay has just produced dogs at this position. And there's going to be a time, whether it's this year or next year, that Blake Corum is that guy. And I just want to have, even if it's just for a year, because it can again, the next year they can draft another guy. Like Quinshon Judkins can suddenly be in Los Angeles. This whole changes. But I'm not going to get down that rabbit hole. But I just can't get away from him. And this offense desperately needed an RB2. And Corum is probably an RB1 in most teams. And he probably beats out Kyren Williams at some point.
Yeah. So to play a little devil's advocate on Corum, who, again, this is one of my post-draft winners. So I'm pretty like he's probably 13 or 14 for me. He's right there. He did not, I don't think, look quite as explosive this year as previous years in college. I mean, this is a guy, he did have the meniscus injury, maybe part of why he was a guy who could have and maybe should have or was thought to have come out last year and went back to school for an extra year. So I will be interested to see, does he kind of get back to pre-meniscus injury form as far as explosiveness? Like if he doesn't, it's fine, but it's just not, he doesn't have quite the upside, obviously, if he's not quite that guy.
Yeah, and just to validate you, like his yards per carry went down every year at Michigan. So you are right. Just counterpoint, his explosiveness was never the best part of his game. He's just he's just technical about it. And
but like one of the pros of him versus Kyren Williams to me is he is even still, I think, more explosive than Kyren Williams. So if you just add that extra level of explosiveness, that's even more of an edge for him.
Yeah. I think like Kyren Williams might be the 1 year wonder that we have every year that goes high in fantasy drafts. I'm talking like David Johnson, Doug Martin, like those kind of players
Yeah.
where you feel like you should draft them because they were so good, and then suddenly they're not good again or they lose their role. And
It is so hard not to just draft based on what happened last year. Now situations change, our thoughts evolve a little bit based on that, but it's always just like you look back to last year, you see what they did. It's so hard not to do that. But like I'm kind of with you. But with that said, it is really hard and maybe even really dumb to try and predict what a rookie will or will not do
yes.
in Sean McVay's system. Like, who
Well,
could
and
do?
I get it too. I mean, Kyron Williams was the RB3 in 12 games. Like
Yeah,
it was insane production. It really, and he won people titles. He had a Triple Crown championship week. Like it's all there. It's just sometimes I have a feeling, and I mean that's really the part of this is me just having a feeling. Uh,
he
but
the thing that's scary is he and Kyron are very similar, but just
mhm,
as prospects, Blake Corum is better. So that is scary from that perspective. I'm not sure if it'll happen this year, but I do think Corum as the more explosive and better guy between the tackles. I think he will have a chance to work his way onto the field as a rookie if he's picking up all of the things, systematically like that he's supposed to. You would think playing for an NFL coach in Harbaugh would maybe help that transition, but we'll see about that. And even if it doesn't happen this year, I do think at some point he'll work his way onto the field in the near future. And then down the road, I do think this is his job at some point in the next 2 years
yeah,
as
I'd
the
agree with
lead
that.
guy, not like completely by himself.
Yeah. All right. You want to jump to your guy here?
Yeah, so 12 real quick from me, Jaden Daniels to get a second quarterback in there. The first positive aspect for him is he is going to add a lot of value running the ball, and that it like I think there's going to be people even in one quarterback that have him higher than me at 12. Because of that, now I will say you have to hope he doesn't get himself killed running the ball because if you just go look at some highlights, he takes some pretty foolish hits and is a pretty skinny guy. Gotta hope that changes quickly in the NFL. Just looking at the situation, I'm with you. Offensive coordinator, don't love the Cliff Kingsbury thing. Not sure if I hate it either. Like Kyler Murray had a lot of good rushing seasons, but I think only had one 4,000-yard passing season with Cliff Kingsbury. I would just say the offensive coordinator situation long term is kind of volatile because Kingsbury is in kind of a prove it spot. Could this be a one and done, two and done? Could Daniels be playing in more than one offensive system on his rookie deal? Like that's very possible. But he does have a very good receiver room. He's got some guys at tight end. He's got decent enough running backs and Robinson and Eckler, who is very QB friendly. Obviously, as a running back that the situation is good enough. The player is good enough. The running is such a cheat code that I think he's worthy of a top 12 pick.
Yeah, the differentiation for me was I think he has so much to improve as a passer that I get like worse Justin Field vibes from him in that first of all, he's going as a QB 13 in underdog right now, which I really disagree with because
Mhm.
he's going above Jared Goff
Well,
and
let me
Matthew
get this.
Stafford.
Let me get this out of the way. I've seen the takes. Like I think Matthew Berry said this, which Washington fans, so maybe some bias there, but that he's going to be the best rookie quarterback this year in fantasy. I just do not. I do
That's
not
enough.
agree.
We as a community, we've gone too far with the Konami cheat code rushing upside because that's what led people to draft Justin Fields as the top 5 quarterback last year,
Yeah.
and that went horribly. My concerns are that he doesn't process as well as a passer. We talked
Mhm.
about this earlier. Like both Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. ran like 2 routes a lot in
Yeah.
college, and I think part of that was not their fault. I
Yeah.
think a lot of it had to do with their quarterback room, and he also has the most Looney Tune like take off, run, and get hit in the middle of the field, and I'm very concerned about that. And
There's a play in college where he takes off up the middle. I think it's the first game against Florida State. He like tries to jump into the
yes,
trenches, and some big either lineman or linebacker just like pushes him straight backwards in the air, and he like he like changes direction in the air and falls down, and it's like, dear God, man, please.
Yeah, I've seen comps to him to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was 1,000 times better as a passer coming
Yeah.
in to the NFL. And Lamar Jackson got the training wheels treatment probably a lot more than he should have in Baltimore, but it also helped his development. The last thing is like I am having so much trouble like figuring out how I feel about Cliff Kingsbury. On the one hand, Kyler Murray was like really good in fantasy under Cliff Kingsbury.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I just don't feel like that air raid game he employs in the NFL is sustainable and works well. Um, and I don't know if Jaden Daniels is the best deployment for it. It's just difficult. And at the end of the day, like giving him to Cliff Kingsbury instead of a more refined offensive coordinator who hasn't lived on being Patrick Mahomes' coach in college
Mm-hmm.
is something that I'm just still concerned about. And I just don't think I really don't think he has a long-term NFL career for so many reasons with that franchise.
It's possible, and one of my losers is partly for those reasons. We'll get to that in a minute. Real quick though, let's just go through it. We'll start with winners and talk some losers too. Let's just kind of fire through these. Dalton, some post draft winners based on landing spot.
So I did 3. I'm sure we usually do 3, so I just figured
Mm-hmm.
that'd be a good number. I'll start off at the top here. Jalen Wright.
He's new Raheem Mostert.
It's legitimately laughable that
Yeah.
that Miami is just like, yeah, we're just going to be fast and think it's going to work all year. It's not, but it's going to work for fantasy.
Jalen Wright. Let's add Malik Washington. Like,
I mean, he's legitimately a Devin Achane clone. Like, he's fast. He also doesn't have vision, and he needs one hole to hit, and then he can like have game breaking speed.
He's not as good as Achane. So that was the one thing that on the one hand, it's a great fit because a lot of people comped him to Raheem Mostert, and it's like, oh, he can just be Raheem Mostert, and Achane is never going to be a guy that gets 15 to 20 touches a game consistently, I don't think. So, yeah, it's great. On the other hand, it's like he'll never be the starter there, so that's a little bit of a bummer. Maybe he could have ended up somewhere where he's the starter, but the scheme fit, trump him, you know what I mean? Like, that, there's a back and forth there.
Yeah, he's also a guy, for the reasons you said, is like a better best ball player where I'm sure he'll have like a 10 touch, 130-yard week with a touchdown thrown in there. I don't know who the starter is in Miami because nobody there can stay healthy. Like Chris Brooks is the one player on that roster who is like a grinder.
But the starter is probably whoever is healthy that week. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I have long-term concerns about Miami's offensive line. They didn't do much to beef it up in the draft. They still have problems on the interior. They lost 2 guys and they're still rolling Teron Armstead out who cannot sustain a full season. But man, is September through mid-October going to hit like crack for that Miami offense. And then going forward from there, it's back to what we saw this year where they kind of get figured out.
Yeah, so I'm with you there. Cade Stover is one for me, tight end going to the Houston Texans. He's a tight end. He gets CJ Stroud as his quarterback. Like, pretty simple. Good player, good athlete. And tight end is one of those positions where you kind of like that he doesn't have to start right away. You also like that the guy in front of him is not so good that if he is ready, he could not play early because like he is the more talented player. But also I do like it as a long-term bet in fantasy. I like it as a long-term landing spot with CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I like it too. I think he's better than Schultz in a lot of ways. He has a better vertical game. He also is a 4th-year player. He's going to come into the NFL knowing a little more. Tight end position always takes time, but he has a lot of the pro-style routes coming from Ohio State. And he's also used to playing around 3 NFL caliber wide receivers coming from Ohio State. And CJ Stroud and him have a shower narrative. They played together at Ohio State.
Oh, we got to call it something else besides shower narrative. All right.
Shower narrative.
I've already given 2 of mine because Blake Corum would have been one of my winners. So let's hear yours.
I got Ray Davis on here.
Okay.
Ray Davis, older than a lot of running backs who've played a couple years in the NFL. Never a good thing long term, but Buffalo established
if you're taking a running back this late, like if you get
he's like a 4th, late 3rd round pick.
If you get anything short term, that's great. You know?
And he can do like he literally is almost a Latavius Murray clone in a lot of what he does. He's not as good as like young Latavius Murray, but Buffalo really does not want James Cook to be a 25 touchback. I think they showed that when they rolled out Ty Johnson, Latavius Murray repeatedly last year. They need a goal line back. Yes, Josh Allen is probably RB1 at the goal line, but Ray Davis has that short down yard work. He also has receiving chops. And just kind of like to cap it off, he's not going to come into the NFL unprepared. He led Vanderbilt and the SEC in rushing 2 years ago. Then he led the SEC again in rushing at Kentucky. It's really hard to do that for anybody, especially on two teams that aren't the powerhouses of the SEC. He is a good player who happens to also be 25 years old starting September 1st. So
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you on pretty much all points there. It is obviously that Bills running. We've been chasing the Bills running back, kind of like the Chiefs wide receiver
yeah,
for the last couple of years in fantasy. Kamani Vidal is my
that's
third.
mine.
I was just I'd be surprised if he's not on your list too. I mean, like I said earlier, J.K. Dobbins. Who the hell knows? Like the health reports are great now. He looks great, feels great. It's awesome. This was just like coming back from a sprained ankle. We'll see. We'll see what when the rubber meets the road in training camp. Kind of what happens there. Gus Edwards, like he will be a factor, but he's just meh. Always been kind of meh in
He's
my
also
mind.
29.
Yeah, he's also getting older. Like I think Vidal is the most realistic. Like you look at the Isaiah Pacheco, James Robinson, kind of late round undrafted guys who come in, find their way on the field quickly and produce. Like explosive player, technically sound. He actually does profile as a guy that could be a lead running back if things fall the right way for him.
Yeah, he was a lot of film grinders' favorite player as far as the film went. He also, I'm doing my team by team breakdown, and I was went and looked back at his college stats. You know, he had 5 touchdowns in the championship game for Troy. Like, kind of like that wild. Like he not only did he ball out, but he was like a really, really good player against bad competition. And he lands like Los Angeles needs 1,000 things on offense. What they don't need is an offensive line. And like I said earlier, Greg Roman, we know he wants to establish it. And I don't believe the bus for Gus is over. He's old. Like it's out. And I love J.K. Dobbins. Right now, J.K. Dobbins is going after Vidal in underdog drafts, which I will continue to disagree with. But long term fit, I love
Mhm.
Vidal as the answer to their running back problems.
Yeah, and like I said, it could even turn out to be short term as well. All right, losers, real quick here. First one for me to go back to Washington. That is the guy who I thought should have been the tight end too, pre-draft, and that has been Sanat. Like
Thank
I,
you. I didn't put him on here, but I'm going to agree with everything you say.
I love him as a prospect. I think he's going to be a good enough player to get on the field, but there's just a lot that makes me feel uneasy about where he landed. First and foremost is Cliff Kingsbury. In Arizona, the best tight end season was Zach Ertz at 500 yards. All the rest were about 300 to 400 yards. Like, is that a Zach Ertz, another tight end problem? Maybe. Is that a Cliff Kingsbury offense problem? Also, maybe. Like, it's just hard to know. You're taking a risk there. Also, Zach Ertz is in Washington, by the
Yes.
way, and so there is that. Like his draft capital, not would make you think that he will get a chance to produce like a fantasy starter in the next year or two. But you mentioned Washington as a bad organization. I just have my doubts that the offensive coordinator and the front office and everybody is all aligned with this pick, given Kingsbury's history and just given Washington's history as a horrifically run franchise. And like, I just have my doubts that this fit is going to be clean and they're going to use him the way they should. If he landed with the Rams or somebody like that, I'd be over the moon. Like I'd have full faith that yeah, this guy is going to kill it. But I'm very uneasy about where he landed.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the offseason, even you have like the whole Ben Johnson is going to be a commander coach.
Yeah.
Then it looked like Dan Quinn became the consolation prize. I'm glad you brought up what Zach Ertz did in Arizona. Just a reminder, this was not like late career Zach Ertz. This was still like very much 1,000 yard Zach Ertz when Cliff Kingsbury jettisoned what he was able to do. And a lot of that has to do with the concepts Kingsbury employees.
Mhm.
Love the player. I really hate that. And I also like there's not going to be a lot of passing efficiency in this offense because I don't think Jaden Daniels is a good passer. And if anything, Dotson and McLaurin deserve the lion's share of that work.
Yeah. Okay, your first one.
I put Troy Franklin here. I don't know what happened, man.
I mean, there's your favorite narrative here.
I drafted him in my underdog, and I talked about that. But like as a whole, this went from like a late first round,
Yeah.
early second round pick. It dropped all the way to round 4, and he ends up in an offense where he is going to be asked to do a lot because there's nothing there.
We'll
And
see if Cortland Sutton is no longer there at some point soon, then that gets even more dire.
Yeah.
If he is, at least you have a guy you can just throw out there at the X and kind of take that pressure off.
But like just the tremendous fall in the NFL draft terrifies me that there's something that we don't know about that NFL organizations know about.
Yeah.
And then like this guy and Marvin Mims are like kind of the same player. Troy Franklin was better in college, but at the same time, like what are we doing in Denver? And then they're rolling out Bo Nix week 1, who I also drafted in the underdog draft, my last pick, but this is a player who did not push the ball downfield at all in college. He tried not to his last year at Oregon. And like Troy Franklin's best spot would be X receiver. And Sean Payton does not want to push the ball down the field. And all of those things just concern me. And it could just be like, I wish he landed somewhere where he could develop. And this is not a situation where I think he develops.
Yeah, and my next loser is kind of in that same breath talking about receivers that fell, and that's Adonai Mitchell. Like, I think if the draft capital were right, which we thought, like I thought for sure, first round pick for Adonai Mitchell. Troy Franklin was like late first, early second. Adonai Mitchell was like, I thought going to be a top 20 to 25 pick.
His over under by the books was 17.5.
Yeah, and like we started to hear some not great things, some of which I kind of felt was unfair. Like we're throwing the diabetes thing out. Like maybe that's why he's so moody, but also then he does drop into the pretty deep into the second round. Like it was like he
55,
went
I think
52 overall, I think.
Okay.
So there are potentially some attitude concerns. Now, sometimes the NFL is right. Sometimes the NFL is dumb. It's just really hard for us to make that call not knowing everything that's going on here. So it is at least a little bit scary. And then like you have, well, first of all, Alec Pierce, I hope you learn Chinese, buddy, because you're not long for the Colts. Like he is definitely going to come in and compete and probably take Alec Pierce's job. But is he ever going to be ahead of Michael Pittman and Josh Downs as a producer in this offense? And that's like best case. He, head on straight, good attitude, all of that, gets on the field. Like that, like best case, I'm still worried about him as the wide receiver 3 in a good offense, but still.
Yeah, well, and like I am really excited about the Colts offense as a whole. I don't think the passing volume is going to extend a lot past 2 guys, one of them being Pittman, and I really think Downs is the other guy. I think there will be big moments for AD Mitchell because he's going to do better than what Pierce was doing.
Yeah.
But it's just at the same time, like this is a player who the concerns were very much real on, and his capital reflected it a lot more than we saw in Jermaine Burton, who we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And you add in like his statistical profile coming out of college was one of the worst of a lot of players all time. His yards per route run was at 1.99, which like that's in like Nelson Aguilar. Who's the guy that Philly drafted so long ago? I don't remember his name. He was a first round pick right before Justin Jefferson.
Rager, Jalen Rager.
Yeah, Jalen Rager. Like he's in that territory of profile. And can he be an outlier? Absolutely. Were there problems in Texas? Absolutely. Those are still like outstanding concerns. And you pair that with the bad draft capital, and you really have to question whether or not he's as good as like some people think he is on film.
Yeah, for sure. And to give my third one, because it's very quick, and then I'll let you go. People were going to get themselves excited about Braylon Allen almost no matter where he went. And now he's behind Breece Hall and he is dead. Like that's it.
Well, not even that. I think Isaiah Davis might be a better player. They drafted him in the next round.
Yeah.
Weird little statistical tidbit here. Braylon Allen is still going drafted in underdog fantasy. I don't think he should be.
No.
I don't. It's dead.
Yeah. Okay. You've got two, and then we'll get out of
One
here.
of them was Jaden Daniels, so we've talked
Okay.
about him. My
Yeah.
last one is another quarterback, a guy I love, a guy I want to love, a guy I've tried so hard to love. It is
It's
Drake
Drake
May.
May.
Yeah, like it, he after doing more reading on him, it's clear he just needs another year of like development, and he's not going to get that New England. And I love what New England did, where they took two wide receivers, two guys I do like, in Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, but that receiving room does not lend itself to giving a quarterback an immediate potential to being successful.
Yeah. This is not Jordan Love being put out there with two rookie receivers, because Jordan Love, while he had not started, had at least been in the NFL for multiple years.
Well, that and like the play calling from LaFleur to
Yeah.
what we're going to see in New England is going to be bad. Uh, Drake May speeds himself up. He also has like his metrics under pressure or in clean pockets last year were like objectively terrible, like bottom half of the FBS in quarterbacking terrible. Uh, so like you put all those things together, and I just don't know. I don't see a window for him to be successful, and it's going to probably be another reset in a couple of years in New England after this experiment runs out. It really sucks. I really wanted to be in on Drake May. I really can't be in on Drake May.
Some are saying Josh Downs made Drake May.
He was way better with Josh Downs, so some are saying that might be correct. But also, he did only have Tez Walker for half the season, so let's just pump the brakes a little bit. I'm still going to root for May. I would not advise you draft May at
Well,
all.
I'm glad to know the vendetta is not personal, at least.
It is not personal. Read his profile in the Beast, and his entire family are a bunch of athletes. He does. If I'm giving you like, because I can't just end this on a sad Drake May note, if I'm giving you a trajectory that lends itself to him, is he has so many similarities to Josh Allen. Athletically, he's underrated. He is a very good runner.
He does crazy stuff too.
He loves to push the ball down the field. And like, if his first year is really bad, and then suddenly Brandon Ayuk is a New England Patriot, and we get a really good offensive minded head coach in New England, I'm going to be wheels up in 2025. But I am going to let my Drake May dreams die for this year. And he definitely did not come out on top in this.
Two guys I'm going to give a big fat thumbs down to, just like not even landing spot, just the players. Just want to get this take out there. As Roman Wilson, Tez Walker, both suck. Don't draft them. I think they're both bad.
Yeah, I mean, Roman Wilson's drafted to be a blocker. That's what he's good at. Tez Walker, all the negatives I said about Drake May, he made things worse for Drake May at a lot of times, and he got beat up at the Senior Bowl by everybody and their mother.
Yep. All right, that is going to do it for episode 139 of the Half Point Per Podcast. We are definitely not back weekly yet. In fact, I think we will maybe have one more show, like before we take a month or so break and then come back for regularly scheduled programming later in the summer. But thank you all so much for listening. Give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Half Point Per Pod. You may have noticed we are now streaming on Twitter. That is or X, whatever you want to call it. That is the reason for the new thing that is moving around Johnny's head constantly and distracting me this entire show. Also on YouTube as well. Give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok, Half Point Per Pod there as well. The link to all those things in the show notes. As always, leave us a 5-star review, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Thank you again for listening, and we'll talk to you guys again sometime soon.